Hello, and welcome to another episode of A Happy Moment. My name is Dan, and I'm glad to have you with me today. My planned guest for this week was under the weather and had to reschedule, so today I bring you the 1939 movie Son of Frankenstein, a little bit sooner than I planned. But that's okay, it's the perfect time of year for it. For that matter, any time of year is perfect for horror. Well, Frankenstein's monster survived a burning windmill in the first movie. Could he also survive an exploding castle? As we will find out, the answer is yes. This movie stars Basil Rathbone as Henry Frankenstein's son, Baron Wolf von Frankenstein, who, along with his wife Elsa, played by Josephine Hutchinson, are on their way via train to inherit his father's castle, traveling all the way there from America. Wolf and Elsa are joined by their young son Peter, and upon arrival, they're given the cold shoulder by the suspicious villagers who aren't happy that another Frankenstein is moving in. We get a scene from some of the village leaders giving a brief recap of how Henry and his monster brought misfortune to them, and how they once used to be prosperous but are now desolate. As the Frankenstein family arrives at the castle, we see that it's fully intact, despite what happened at the end of Bride and Frankenstein. However, later in the movie we learn that there was a separate laboratory, and that is what was destroyed, or rather mostly destroyed. There's a couple brief glimpses of the sinister character Igor, played by Bela Lugosi, and we're left to wonder what role he'll play. A couple villagers mention Igor has a broken neck, and everyone seems a little wary of him. Wolf is visited by Inspector Krogh, played by Lionel Atwill. Atwill is a great actor who has minor roles in several of these movies, usually playing the role of some sort of authority figure. We see he has a mechanical arm, and he tells the story of how the monster attacked his home when he was a boy and ripped it out. He warns Wolf and also pledges to assist him if the villagers get too threatening. He also mentions 6 unsolved murders where all the victims had ruptured hearts, the implication being that everyone thinks the monster committed those crimes, even though he hasn't been seen. In the middle of the night, we see Peter sleeping in his room. We find out there's a hidden passage and Igor is creepily spying on him. The next day, Wolf pays a visit to the laboratory, where Igor tries to kill him by dumping a rock on his head. Igor states he thought Wolf was there to kill him, and talks about how the villagers unsuccessfully tried to hang him for stealing bodies, and that's why his neck is broken. Igor leads him deeper into the lab, and we get our first glimpse of the monster, who is played by Boris Karloff for the final time. He appears to be unconscious, but then his hand moves slightly. In the spirit of the first 2 movies, "He's alive!" Wolf proclaims. Igor says the monster is his friend and was injured, and wants Wolf to make him better. Eager to work on his father's creation, Wolf agrees. Meanwhile, the villagers are suspicious of all the activity at the laboratory and bring Igor in for questioning. They threaten to hang him again if they find out he's up to no good and stealing bodies again. We also learn that the 6 men that were previously murdered were all part of the jury who hanged Igor the first time. The other 2 are alive, and Igor laughs in their faces. Back in the lab, Wolf debates over how to proceed with the monster and ultimately says it's his duty as a scientist to resurrect the monster so he can be studied, and then his father's name will be praised. His first attempt to resuscitate him fails, and the monster remains unconscious. Or does he? Inspector Krogh visits the castle to inquire about what Wolf has been up to. Peter walks in just then, just waking up from a nap, and he talks about a giant that visited him. Wolf and Krogh are immediately on edge, and Wolf rushes to the lab in search of Igor and the monster. He finds the monster, who almost strangles him, but then seems to get a headache. Igor appears and says he controls the monster, and says Wolf will never touch him again, despite Wolf saying the monster isn't well yet. But Igor promises to keep the monster in the lab, then gives an evil laugh. Later that night, Igor spies on Wolf and Benson. Benson is Wolf's assistant and the only other person who knows about the experiments on the monster. Wolf plans to send his family away and try to gain control of Igor so he can, in turn, control the monster. Igor then takes the monster to the village and orders him to murder the other 2 men responsible for his hanging. It's also implied that Benson may have been murdered as well. The villagers are worked into a frenzy and begin gathering outside Frankenstein's castle. Inspector Krogh comes to the castle and informs Wolf that he can't leave. He also talks to Peter about the giant, and Peter shows him a watch that the giant gave him. It's a watch that belonged to Benson. When the inspector is caught away because of another murder, Wolf goes to the lab. He intends to destroy the monster, but Igor stops him. The inspector returns and declares Wolf is under arrest, but agrees to let him go to the lab so he can kick Igor off the property. Igor is waiting and attacks Wolf, but Wolf shoots him twice in the stomach. Back at the castle, Krogh discovers a secret passage and finds the corpse of Benson inside. The monster discovers that Igor has been shot and is seemingly dead, and he goes into a rage. Krogh confronts Wolf and accuses him of bringing the monster back to life. We see the furious monster destroying the lab and marching towards the castle using the secret passage, where he kidnaps a willing Peter who goes with him without struggle. We see that there is a boiling sulfur pit below the lab, and the monster briefly seems to consider dropping Peter in, but then decides against it. They're walking through the lab together when Wolf and Elsa arrive, along with Krogh, who followed the monster through the secret passage. Krogh immediately starts shooting at the monster, who rips off the inspector's mechanical arm. Wolf comes swinging across the room and hits the monster, sending him flying into the sulfur pit. Our ending scene is the Frankenstein family deeding the castle to the village and then departing on a train. The villagers are cheerful, and I think the inspector must have told them that Wolf killed the monster, leaving out the part that he also resurrected him. I think everybody has heard of Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein, but Son of Frankenstein is a lot less known, despite the fact that it's actually a pretty good movie too. Basil Rathbone is great in his performance, and I think has a wider acting range than Colin Clive, who played Henry in the first two films. We see him optimistic and full of joy in the beginning of the movie, then witness his descent into darkness as the film progresses, and I think he was superb in the role. The film also does really well incorporating tension into several of the scenes, like when Peter first tells Wolf and Krogh about the giant. Overall, very enjoyable movie. If you think a sulfur pit will stop the monster, though, I'll tell you right now that you are wrong. The series will continue with The Ghost of Frankenstein. Until next time, thanks for joining me. If you'd like to follow me, I'm on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for Happy Moment Podcast. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to the person who subscribed to me on YouTube. YouTube has a lot of detailed statistics, and you can see when someone subscribes to your channel after watching a video. And someone did just that after watching my Bride of Frankenstein video, so thank you. Liking and subscribing are really helpful, and I appreciate it. So thanks again, and take care, everybody.